Yes, dear viewer, there is such a thing as too many role-playing games. It makes my skin crawl to say it, but guys like this
Seriously? Another fantasy
correct.
RPG? Pathfinder already fixes everything.
Just play Pathfinder.
But they're only correct for themselves, as in, lucky for them, playing only one other fantasy game fulfilled their every desire, solved all their problems with the most popular fantasy RPG, and that's how this works. Every player or game master starts with one game and will reach a point when playing another fantasy game doesn't add much to their overall experience. For me, that's taken about 10 years and 40 total RPGs, but in under 15 minutes, I think, I'm gonna give you the brutally honest yay, or nay micro review of all 40 games I've played, either sharing its coolest thing that made a lasting impression, pushing me to run it again, or not. Likewise, at the end, I'll share the RPGs I'm most motivated to play this year, because if you know my intro, I'm all about having more fun with role-playing games, not merely playing more games. Number 1, the first TTRPG I ever played, D&D, but heavily homebrewed. As the story goes, it's 2015 in my best friend's basement, and we had the 5e Player's Handbook, but we made up everything about our characters' abilities, because the only rule in this campaign was the rule of cool. And the single coolest thing that made a lasting impression and got me hooked on tabletop RPGs was this new idea that a character I'm playing, unlike a video game, could try anything with GM approval. To this day, I favor TTRPGs in which any character can try to pick a lock, or cast a spell from a scroll, or hold a shield. Like, if your game tells me that Gandalf wouldn't be able to do this, you better have a good reason in the lore, or you're just recreating video games, and I'm gonna ignore that rule every time. This game gets a rank of yay, would happily run this RPG. 2. The RPG I wrote in 2016. Yeah, based on that first experience, I wrote my own simple fantasy RPG that used a character ability tree instead of classes, but after running it, my epiphany was that classes are excellent for emphasizing the unique bonuses of each character. It's just the penalties that come with the classes of some games that I don't like. Hashtag let wizards wear armor. So I gotta give my own game would steal from it or play it again, but probably not run it. 3. D&D 3rd Edition. Later in 2017, my then girlfriend, now wife, Grace World Destroyer, found 3E at a used bookstore and ran a fun campaign, but dang dude, the only real argument she and I have ever had were about those rules. However it was worded, she was convinced that this were-rat guy could only be damaged by silver weapons, so my character's +1 dagger didn't work, and it was a whole thing. So the coolest thing I learned here was to avoid anything crunchier than D&D 5e. So 3e gets a nay, would maybe steal from this RPG, but not go out of my way to play it again. Now 4, D&D 5e 2014, after 3e, we played this game inside and out for years, and I'd have to boil it down to 2 important lessons. A, the coolest thing for me, advantage and disadvantage. Roll twice and take the higher or lower result is so elegant that I now use some version of it in every game I play. B, the not cool part for me, after the low levels, 5e feels like 3e again. So that's yay for the low levels, nay for the rest. And even back then, I started looking for new RPGs where the characters were less like superheroes and more like people being heroic. And that led me to number 5. Call of Cthulhu. Yeah, in 2019, I played my baby's first non-D&D role-playing game, and as a longtime fan of the Cthulhu mythos, I loved this particular subgenre of horror, but I also realized that I don't like games with piles of skills. It's a lot to remember as a GM, and as a player, it means your character is bad at most of the things on your own sheet. Hashtag let wizards wear armor. It's the same problem. So that's a nay for me, dog. And I went back to playing just D&D for a few years until I began my rampage through the next 35 different RPGs you're about to hear in only a 3-year period. Alright, we are speeding up significantly. Dungeon Crawl Classics, D20, Pulp Fantasy, opened my mind in late 2022, and just last week I made a whole video about my favorite cool things to steal from it, so check that out. But perhaps my favorite lesson is to make monsters mysterious, because the more your monsters become recognizable, the less your world feels fantastical. Yay. Skate Wizards, a minimal D6 game, exactly what it says on the tin, and honestly, the coolest thing this game did for me was launch my collection of cassette tapes. Oh, and guess what? These skateboarding wizards can hold shields. Yay, easy yay. Now a montage, Cairn First Edition, Easy D6, Index Card RPG, all stripped down fantasy games that I played in the same weekend in spring 2023 and immediately shoved their coolest things into my 5e campaign at the time. Hero coins, aka luck tokens, exploding crits, using a default target number either known to all players or on their sheet, and ditching squares of movement and opportunity attacks. Plus, this is when I started dropping in spell scrolls from Dungeon Crawl Classics, and everybody clapped. They didn't clap, but I swear this was the pinnacle of my 5e game mastering, and it's when I started playing one-shots with the intention to harvest a game's coolest ideas. But for these three, when it comes to running again versus stealing from or playing again versus not playing again, I gotta give these a yay, because they're all absolutely worth reading, worth playing, worth stealing from, but realistically, for a generic fantasy RPG title, I'm only gonna run the simplest rule sets, and that's Cairn, Shadowdark, and low-level 5e for nostalgia. So an even more negative montage, X-Crawl Classics, Monster of the Week, Cypher System, that's a nay, because while they were all fun for me, they were mechanically too different or too similar to other games already in my library. And spooky montage of the games my group played in October 2023. Goons and Ghosts, Shadowdark, and Candela Obscura, that's a yay. Candela is a D6 horror game that replaced Call of Cthulhu for us because same vibe, fewer skills, though it too was replaced the very next year, foreshadowing. Goons and Ghosts is another D6 comedy horror RPG and is my favorite game to run around Halloween for its genre and its simplicity, so much so that I wrote my own non-fantasy game based partially on this rule set. More foreshadowing. And Shadowdark. How do I love thee? I swear this is relevant. Shadowdark is the D20 fantasy RPG I wish I had more time to play. So now, in every other game I run, there's no dark vision and torches last 1 hour of real time. I prefer to use the magic items and monster stat blocks from this game whenever I'm running another D20 fantasy game because they're just so... To date, Shadowdark is my favorite game to design for. It's why I wrote a book for it, and it's why I've been working hard to level up on 2 more. So yeah, this part of the video is sponsored by you checking out Under the Shadow of Hellfast Spire, a pulp dark fantasy collection of classes, monsters, and magic items with a simple hex crawl setting and a fully Jacquesed dungeon, both mine and crypt, the Coal Catacombs. Overall, similar in scope and contents to a Shadowdark Cursed Scroll zine, but that means a larger dungeon than all the little ones we packed into Delve for deeper exploration. And right now, there's a tiny sampler of content available on the Kickstarter pre-launch page linked below, and more on the way. Just be sure to follow the campaign to be notified when Hellfast Spire launches. Okay, where were we? Then 2023 ended with a bunch of beta playtests for a few D20 fantasy RPGs. Superhero Daggerheart and DC-20, Grimdark Deathbringer, and Pulpy Vagabond. Yay. And 2024 kicked off with Grace running Thirsty Sword Lesbians, Cats of Cthulhu, and For the Queen. That's a nay, yay, and this ranking system is starting to feel ridiculous, but again, great sessions all around with only a lasting impression from For the Queen, a zero prep, card-based romantasy RPG. And I even used this game within my last DCC campaign to let my players improvise lore about the queen of our setting. And here's 2 more unique RPG playtests. The sci-fi action game Earthwild, which gets an from me, mostly on genre, and the Pokemon-inspired Ketchum RPG. Yay! Because it's my own D6 RPG based partially on Goons and Ghosts, alpha version currently available to Patreon supporters, and everyone will hear more about it after I finish these Shadow Dark books. Now the One Ring, Dice Pool Lord of the Rings RPG, not only built on the greatest story ever told, but also has a coolest thing that's hard to explain really fast: target numbers on the character sheet, while also being a roll high system. Yay. Into the Odd, second most influential fantasy RPG that you must read and play, but realistically for me, because like I said earlier, I'm gonna run its copycats with even more simple rules or different subgenres. Crown and Skull, more D20 fantasy, and more because too many skills for me and roll low, but I'm determined to steal how the GM rolls for random monster actions. Corny Gron, I don't actually know how to pronounce it. Solo fantasy that fits in a zine and finally showed me solo games are awesome. Yay. And spooky montage for October 2024, The Zone, Mouse Ritter, Mothership, and 10 Candles. That's nay, Yay. Sci-fi horror card game didn't do it for me. Literally Into the Odd with mice. Basically Call of Cthulhu in space, but extremely popular, so I gotta try it again to see what the deal is, and my group's favorite horror RPG that scooped Candela Obscura. And finally, the new games I played in 2025. D&D 5e 2024, same as 2014. Yay for the low levels and the starter set, nay for the rest. Nimble 5e, more D20 fantasy, but technically the closest rule set I've found to the fantasy RPG I would write, with some notable differences explained in a full video on my channel, but overall, yay. Full version of Daggerheart, superhero fantasy, and the more I play it, the more I want to simplify it. It's still a yay though. Legend in the Mist, rustic fantasy with characters based only on words, not stats. Yay, but I could see this getting scooped by a more simple version of this kind of rule system. Dread, it's the horror RPG with a Jenga tower that I'm sure you've heard of. Because it's super fun, but I'd just rather play it, not run it. And Pirate Borg, it's the first Borg game that I've actually played, and I mean the genre's in the title, so I know my group would be down for this. Yay. All right, now last, but certainly not least, and I 1000% count this as an RPG, I played in a murder mystery dinner party, which I always thought of as like a party game for like older normies, but it's literally Bronstein, the original style of role-playing that inspired the creators of D&D, and I'd totally do it again. Yay. Now, as promised, here's an alphabetical list of the RPGs Grace and I are hoping/expecting to play at least a little of this year, but it's a lot, and who knows what I'll actually get up to, so please leave your top recommendations in the comments, like this video if you enjoyed it, and say thanks to our sponsor and our supporters on Patreon and YouTube who make all this possible. Keep building. And this is just my totally sick new basement, by the way. Like, look at this, man. Grace and I were so happy with the old school look. Okay, bye.